is October 19th, 2025, and we are on yet another program of Nation Watch. Once again, I want to take some time to send our love and our regards on the Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I didn't have my pink shirt last week, but I ensured I have my pink shirt this week, and I encourage all to participate in all of the events. There are a lot of walks and awareness projects going on right now, and I encourage you all to find a way to participate and to give back for those persons living with breast cancer and the families of those persons. It is not an easy feat at all, so we give our strength and our power to those individuals. Also, going to be celebrating Diwali, the festival of light. So we would like to extend a heartfelt and warm welcome Diwali to all our Hindus, brothers and sisters from the People's National Congress Reform and the APNU. By extension, we're going to be celebrating with our brothers and sisters this Monday, I believe. And for those of you who may not be celebrating, I hope you enjoy your 4-day weekend. There's not a lot of these going around, so we do need to enjoy them as much as we can, as much as possible, and ensure we keep our roads and our country safe. Today, as most of you know, I have a very special guest with us today, a young man that I've had the opportunity to meet during the campaign season. We've had, I think, a very light reaction, and based on my conversation and discourse I have with him, I'm confident that this young man is a very well-placed, well-versed, and well-educated young man, and he will be getting into some really nitty-gritties of a topic that we alluded to in our last program, but we will go more in depth of it, and I'm going to let him introduce it. But this young man's name is Mr. Richard Hoyte. He was one of our candidates and made his political debut, like myself, in the last election campaign. And I'm pleased to say that from that date to now, Richard has not stopped, and he has been on the ground, as I would say, boots on the ground, and he has been at every part of the country that he has been that he can make and he intends to make, along with honorable mention to Mr. Terence Campbell, to Saiku Andrews, to Sherrod Duncan, to my very good friend Michael Richmond. These young men, oh, and how could I forget? Special mention to Mr. Delon Carter. These young men have been on the ground from since the elections have been, the results for election rather, have been announced all up to now. They have not left the community. They have been in many, many communities. I'm going to let him talk about that briefly. So I just want to take some time to, shout out our PNCR and APNU soldiers who have been on the ground. And for the others whose names I'm not calling, please don't take any offense. I might be young, but there's a lot on my mind sometimes. So these things tend to slip through the crack. But I just wanted to shed a light on them because we have Richard here, and Richard has been a part of that team, and they have been keeping the ground alive. So we'd like to welcome Mr. Richard Hoyte to our program. Richard, welcome, welcome, welcome. I know you were supposed to come here since a few weeks back. We were supposed to have you on this program, but now we have you. I mean, this political landscape we have is very dynamic. So as the things change, we have to adjust, but I'm glad I have you here, not just in your capacity as a political individual, but as your capacity as an engineer. Right, so I know you have a few qualifications, if I'm just being modest. So I would like you to tell the viewing public, before we get into the discussion, a little bit of your professional experience and your academic background.
Thank you, Eden. Thank you for having me on the program today. Well, I attended University of Guyana, and I graduated with a degree in civil engineering. I also did a master's in business administration from the Bakke Graduate University in Seattle, Washington. And I did a master's degree in quantity surveying from the University College of Estate Management in the UK. And so with that, I have been working as a consultant across Guyana and the region, the Caribbean region. And so I was exposed to a lot of international projects, and so there's where I got most of my experience over the last 6 7 years from. And so I am very concerned, should I say, with the way in which we handle our projects in Guyana. As it relates to the work that the APN has been doing, um, from the time the elections, like you said, were over, we were in a number of communities, and we continue to be in those communities. Um, I can name a few.
Yeah, yeah, please.
Alwaystone,
Yeah, yeah.
where the fire was. We didn't go to Alwaystone because of a fire. We had plans to, as a matter of fact, while we were campaigning, Michael Richmond, as you mentioned, had made a promise to the persons in Alwaystone that regardless of the outcome of the elections, the APNU will be back in the community to touch base with them and support them in whatever need there is. And he and the APNU kept that promise, went back into the communities, supported them. Unfortunately, there was a fire, and the support that we give, Mr. Terence Campbell, Saiku Andrews, and Dylan Carter. I think we had also Mr. His name is, like you said, lots of things on our minds. But we were all there. We supported those persons the best way we could. And we have made promises to them that we will keep. There was also a fire in Eastville, a very unfortunate event where a family lost their home. We also supported that family because of our representative in that community, in that region, Ms. Robin Simon, who reached out to us. There again, Mr. Terence Campbell, Saiku Andrews, pool our resources, the APNU, and we went to support those families. We also supported, and we are on the ground in Tocqueville, in North Rhineveld, East Rhineveld, Sophia, North Sophia, West Bank, Potential. So we are on a mission to engage members of the communities, remind them of our support for them, use that support to develop a better relationship with them, and to garner a camaraderie with those people. So far, it has been effective. Persons are understanding what really transpired and what is required to rebuild. And so that is the aim of the game.
And coming off the heels of the elections and the results, and your continued work in those communities, personally speaking, what has been your view of the response of those outreaches that we've been conducting?
Well, let me tell you, first of all, it surprised me. The first outing we had, persons received our message. There was a genuine call for a presence of the APNU in the communities, which they did not see for whatever reason. But now persons are saying this is what we wanted to see. This is what we were expecting to see. And so we understand as a party what needs to be done now, and we are going to meet those needs in the communities.
Awesome, awesome. So let's go straight into the more meaty and the weighted topics. Now, I think it's about 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks and change, there has been a big infrastructural, and I say that very loosely. There's been a big infrastructural development and change within the Guyanese landscape, more specifically on the East Bank corridor of the Demerara River, where we have a new river bridge that has been created. Now, I studied law, I don't know much about the engineering and all those fancy stuff in relation to that. So, we want us to go through and assess this project from your expertise? I know you told me you had the opportunity to peruse some of the feasibility studies, and you will have some, knowledge based on your colleagues and your friends. So we want to discuss this bridge. Now, the position out there is that the bridge is the best thing that has happened to Guyana, mostly for those on the west side. It has improved the commute time versus I heard a particular popular social media commentator making a little joke, and he was saying that a lady was complaining that she doesn't know what to do with the rest of her afternoon because she's accustomed to spending 3 hours traversing from town to over the river, and now it takes her less than an hour. And she complains she don't know what to do with herself, and she don't get to sleep. And everybody seems to have it. I mean, we're not engineers, so it's only so much we could be able to appreciate, and that's why we have you here today, because myself, along with our viewers and the Guyanese public, want to really understand what does this bridge mean. Now, I've had an opportunity to also peruse the feasibility study. I mean, and it's just a lot of words. They don't really mean much to me, but one of the things that really jumped out to me was that there were 3 proposed locations for the bridge. There was the Houston to Versailles. I think there's the current location where it is now in Peters Hall, and I think there was something else, New Hope, which is a little bit more further.
Further up. Yes.
Correctly. However, the government, the PPP administration, has opted to use the Peters Hall route. What are your thoughts about that? And was that the best option to place the bridge? Sorry.
Yeah. Well, the feasibility study answers your question. So it says that the best location was the Houston to Versailles, or Versailles to Houston, however you look at it, location. And so for me, the Versailles to Houston location was more feasible, the most feasible, because when you land traffic in Houston, in 3 minutes, that traffic could be in central Georgetown. And Houston is already a commercialized zone. And when traffic is landed there and it heads into the city, there's very little disruption in urban communities. And I suppose that was the main reason for the feasibility study citing that location as the most feasible. Where the current bridge is located, I think it comes off in, is that Providence?
Does geographically speaking, I believe that it goes over this canal that separates Republic Park or Nandi Park, which is in the front, and Providence. So it goes into, I believe, Nandi Park, and then it cuts into Windsor Estates, and then it feeds into the Heroes Highway. So that would be Nandi Park, but you won't be wrong to call it Providence.
Right. So when you land there, you're landing traffic, which is commercial traffic and also leisure traffic in urban communities. And when you do that, you disrupt the peace, first of all, in urban communities. It can impact on the property value in urban communities. But what I want to explain is that the commute time might, for the young lady that the social media commentator was talking about, she might be enjoying more time in the afternoon. No, but let's talk about those persons who have to pay public transport to bring them to South Georgetown and then take them back to Central Georgetown. It is inevitable that the cost for public transport will increase, because it is too early now to see the impact as it hits the pocket. But eventually it will. And the first persons to shout are usually the bus conductors and bus drivers.
Definitely.
And we expect them to shout eventually. And it is only a matter of time before they start saying, well, transportation fee got to increase because who's paying us to do this extra commute? South Georgetown and then back into the city and then the question is, what route are they using to get back into the city? Are they coming up Heroes Highway to the Jaguar, the Eagle roundabout? Or are they turning through Eccles? Or what is the designated route for minibuses? Nobody knows. And that's one. That's two, actually. So the third thing is, now that there's a new route, or there's an undefined route for public transport, taxis too, that are not really bound by routes for public transport, have also the option, and will use it, I'm sure, to raise their taxi fare. If you used to pay, let's say, $2,000 from Reading Hope to Georgetown, it can be safe to say that fare is going to increase. Because when you get over to Heroes Highway and you have to come all the way back into the city, the same thing happens there. And so, while you might be enjoying now a faster commute, there is in the long term an impact that's coming that will hit the pockets of the ordinary man. Had the bridge been placed where it was initially selected from a feasibility study to be placed, that argument would have been out of the window. There would have been no need for an increase in bus fare or taxi fare or whatever it is.
No.
And the commute would have been even faster, getting persons into the city, because that route is like 10 minutes, not 5 minutes away from the city.
So you use some terms just now. You talked about commercial traffic and leisure traffic. So for folks at home who are not familiar with that, what do you mean when you say there's more commercial traffic going into urban areas? What do you mean by that?
Right. So commercial traffic would be traffic that gain money from their movement, like sand trucks, lumber trucks, farm to market trucks that bring produce from Perica to Georgetown. Those are commercial traffic. Leisure would be considered persons who come to work or go to visit others. Those are grouped into that category. And so you don't make money by going to visit a friend. Like I was going over the river last weekend. I didn't make money from that, right? So if I was taking produce, I would be making money. And so that is the commercial traffic that I'm talking about. And so it would be one day you wake up, if you live in Providence or in Republic Park, and you look out your door and you would see a sand truck blazing past your house.
Or over.
Over your house and heading to somewhere on the West Coast, West Bank, whatever. Vegetable produce truck coming through, speeding through your street. And like we said, there's no designated route. You know, you look outside, you live in Eccles, you look outside and you see people stand up flagging down 32 buses in front of your street, you know. Or the 32 bus driving through your community, soliciting passengers to get over the river. So those are commercial traffic that we talk about, right? That are carrying a significant impact in urban communities. And these urban communities would never be the same because of this traffic.
So we understand that there was a feasibility study and it said it should have been done in Houston, but yet we have a bridge that is in Peters Hall, Providence, Nanny Park area. Based on your professional expertise, what do you think could justify that distance between Houston, carrying it basically right next to the old bridge? This is a case where they just want to show that, oh, this is the old bridge, this is the new bridge. In your professional experience, what would justify drifting away from the feasibility study to put in the bridge where it currently is?
Well, in my professional experience, there's no reason that I can't come up with a reason for drifting away from a study that points you in a particular direction. Unless, of course, you have an ulterior motive.
Mm.
So, I had a lecturer that once told us, engineering is not arguable; it's measurable.
Mm.
So, if you have the data, if you have the information, if you have a study done that tells you, points you in a particular direction, then what is needed? What else do you need to cause you to drift off? And if there's something new that wasn't covered in that study that caused you to drift off or change course, then that should be made public, right? So, and if it's not made public, then I really can't come up with anything that would guide a group of people or anyone into a direction.
And this is
like
from
that.
the point of view from an engineer.
Yes,
And it's safe to assume that they would have had other engineers with just as much experience and
and
qualifications
correct,
as you did leading this project currently.
correct.
You don't know any of these persons.
I have no idea who they were.
Okay.
No
I'm
idea.
just making a little fun here. But with the new bridge how it is right now, I know one of the main concerns as somebody who uses the eastbound corridor to commute from my house all the way to town. One of the concerns I've had, and I'm sure a lot of Guyanese people would have had as well, was how that road is being fed into the bridge traffic. You understand? And I see that ever since they created the roundabout at the seawalls there, that seemed to be a safe default setting for our public works approach into dealing with traffic bottlenecks and traffic congestions. And then we saw another one hitting I think it was Back Road right by Mandela, and then they did
Yes.
the next one at Eccles and the Jaguar,
Right,
and then
right.
they did the next one in Diamond, and now they did a new one at the Windsor Estates I think that's between Greenfield and Eccles. They now have a new roundabout that is feeding into the bridge.
Right.
What was that the only way they could have created or divert the traffic into the bridge? And I think we've seen it. Persons would have seen it. How it's so easy for traffic to be backed up and the traffic congestion to happen on the roundabout. What are your thoughts about that?
But first of all, roundabouts are not a solution to traffic congestion. And if you start with the notion that a roundabout can solve your congestion problem, you're starting wrong. So roundabouts, the purpose of roundabouts are to regulate traffic in junctions, right? So once used correctly, a roundabout can regulate traffic in a junction where you have vehicles entering from different locations. And I said when used correctly because how they're being used in Guyana is in a chaotic manner that really only lends to confusion, where vehicles come from all directions and try to force themselves into the roundabouts and create more bottlenecks. And before you know it, traffic around the roundabout stops, which shouldn't be. Traffic around the round. If you look at the roundabout from above, you should see circles. Vehicles going around and creating what is called a mirage, like a circle. You're seeing all the time. So vehicles enter, leave, enter, leave, enter, leave, and that doesn't rarely happens when there's a congestion, which tells you that the roundabouts are not to solve congestion problems. They just regulate traffic in the junction. In other words, they replace the police or a traffic light.
Were you sure in Guyana? Because I have seen
Those were that's the purpose of a roundabout. Now, what happened?
Yeah.
What's happening now is that we have roundabouts that are improperly designed. So we've got 4 roads of traffic coming into a roundabout. Let's take, for example, the roundabout at there's the Eagle at
Which one?
Mandela and Heroes Highway.
Yeah.
That's the Eagle.
Jumbly Bird.
Oh,
Jumbly Bird.
right. Okay, that's the same one. So there's that roundabout there, and we've got traffic coming in from that is Aubrey Barker, traffic coming in from Heroes Highway, traffic coming in from Mandela. Mandela, 2 roads from Mandela. The one what we call back road, and the other Mandela coming this way, Mandela Avenue. So we've got Aubrey Barker, Mandela, and Heroes Highway, 4 roads, and those are public roads that carry high volume of traffic, mostly in rush hour. And the roundabout is so small that from the time you enter the roundabout, you exit the roundabout. So what happens is that instead of persons getting an opportunity when there is a high volume of traffic to slip into the roundabout, persons have to back up and wait because the roundabout is so small for the volume of traffic it's receiving. You find persons entering the roundabout, sticking their nose into the roundabout, and congestion taking place in the roundabout. And that's the reason why police have to be in those roundabouts to say, well, you wait, you go. That's defeating the purpose of the roundabout. I was not
going to say, but would we say that defeats the purpose having police ranks in a roundabout?
In a roundabout. Every roundabout we've got police ranks in. So we have to move away from the notion that roundabouts create or roundabouts solve traffic congestion. They don't. They're not designed to. They just regulate the traffic in the junction. We have to find a more modern approach to solving our congestion problems. And now that there is very little or no space existing at any of the roundabouts that were installed, the only solution now lends to flyovers or overpasses, whichever one you want to call it. I prefer the term overpass. Flyover is a bit too loose, so we don't want anybody to take that, literally, because
so that road or that part of the bridge that goes over the main road on the east bank, that wouldn't be considered a flyover, or an overpass. Because I know a lot of people look at it.
You're talking about the new bridge that comes over?
Bridge that goes over. That
of course, that could be considered an overpass.
So, do you think that the best option would have been what they did, which is to create a roundabout feeding in, or is it that
right? So I'm going to that now. So there again, that is a much bigger roundabout. I've not seen it operate in the peak hours, but what I can tell you is that when we approach transportation design, we have to approach it with empirical data. You have to first of all know what volume of traffic you are building or designing for. And so what is required is a traffic count to see how much traffic is going over the bridge, how much traffic is passing Heroes Highway, going in a southerly direction, how much is coming in a northerly direction. And then once you know that volume of traffic, then you can design your roundabout because you know how much traffic is coming in and how much traffic is going to come out of it, and in which direction the traffic is going once it leaves that roundabout. So one of the transportation engineering methodologies is conducting a traffic count. What you do, back in the days, what we used to do was to have a person sit under an umbrella and tick off. If a truck passes, you tick. Car, you tick. So there are different columns for you to tick. It's like you're tallying the vehicles. But now, a camera can be used to gather that information. And once that information is collected, it can be placed in a design software that can give you plot a graph and once interpreted, you can know the volume of traffic you have, the size of the roundabout that is required, and all of that. You will know who's going where. You will know what time is your peak hours. Not somebody saying, well, yesterday morning there was a backup from 7 o'clock to 8:30, so the peak hour is 7 o'clock to 8. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and I mean, just to butt in a little bit, I remember when they first did the Heroes Highway and they installed the Jaguar roundabout. There was a expectation I had that this is going to make traffic a little bit easier. So now you're driving up. And I remember one time, and I never went back on the Heroes Highway in peak hours in the afternoon ever again after that. I took my chances with the West Bank, with the bridge traffic on the main road.
Right.
Because I find that you get through a little faster there.
Yes.
Because you have a complete standstill after you pass like Sage Pond by Blue Water side.
Correct.
At a certain point, and I mean, I remember during elections when I'm coming down from home and I'm heading down, and you see the traffic backed all the way up almost to Arby Barker Road.
Correct.
You understand? For that same reason you said, because the traffic is not moving
around the roundabout.
Yeah. And then you're going to have police now who are going to stop a whole part of the roundabout. So you have four entry points into the roundabout, and all four have to stop just to allow one set of traffic to feed through. And then I'm sitting there in the traffic and I'm thinking to myself, well, we would have been better off with a crossroad here.
Yeah.
Than just
a junction.
Because it looks like a roundabout in view.
Yes.
The perception is that we have a roundabout, but when you really analyze as you rightfully said, how the traffic is being fed and how the traffic is exiting the roundabout, you realize that this is just a glorified junction. This is a glorified crossroad. This cannot be a roundabout, because for the persons who've been fortunate enough, you go to places like Barbados. Barbados is a roundabout country. Every other
the Bahamas.
And when you see that, from what I understood when I traveled, is that the roundabout really is to allow the continuous movement of traffic. So at no point in time are you supposed to approach a roundabout and stop. I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, part of the roundabout issue is the drivers and the education in relation to road safety and how to handle the roundabouts. Because too often I've been in a roundabout, and this is common in the seawalls, and it is common at the Jumbie Bird roundabout I found for my time on the road as a normal commuter, is that when you head into the roundabout, people don't know about lanes, or people don't understand the importance of keeping one lane on the roundabout. So I remember a time I myself made a mistake. I think this was at we call it by Diamond, that roundabout by Diamond at the top. I was heading into the roundabout and I was planning to turn off and head into by the Corbin, the hospital there.
Yeah.
Right? So I was coming around that first roundabout now, and I mistakenly went into the outer lane instead of going into the inner lane. Right? And I'm turning off. Sorry, no, I'm in the inner lane and I'm turning off to continue to go. So, and I'm supposed to be on the outer lane.
Right.
So I'm now trying to make a turn out, but the guy who is on the outer lane now,
he's continuing around the round.
So it was barely by a split second when I'm now trying to turn off. I see him continue to be up under me. So now I had to make the whole round.
Go right around again.
Roundabout, and I'm telling myself, wow, I made a mistake today.
Yeah.
But there are people who think that is how you drive on the roundabout, as an engineer. What are your thoughts about the way that Guyanese drive on these roundabouts?
Right, that's an excellent question, Eden. The issue is that there wasn't enough education on the use of roundabouts. As you approach a roundabout, you yield because you have to give way to the traffic within the roundabout. Like I said earlier, there must be continuity in a roundabout. You don't go and stick your nose in a roundabout and then expect people to stop so that you could get in. It doesn't work that way. And so there must be continuity in a roundabout. and you give way to the traffic on your right. So if you come to a roundabout, everything on your right, the traffic in the roundabout moves in a clockwise manner, right? So once you come into a roundabout and everything to your right, once you see traffic there, you stop and you wait for a break in that traffic, and then you enter the roundabout, and then you continue. So you must yield before you get into the roundabout and give way to traffic within the roundabout. Now, having said that, when you get into the roundabout, where do you want to exit? If you're going straight, like for example, if you're on Mandela Avenue, we're talking about the Eagle
From
roundabout,
Street heading up.
right? And you're heading to Heroes Highway. So if you're going straight, you just keep to your left. You get in the roundabout, continue on to Heroes Highway. If you're going up to Mandela Back Road area, you keep right on the roundabout and you go around and you exit and you leave. All right. So there should have been more education on the use of roundabouts, but there hasn't been. Now, we learn by the way in Guyana. You know, we throw people out there, throw things at them and expect them to learn by the way, which is very dangerous. As it relates to, I made a point earlier about the overpass being a solution to the problems we face. I want to see overpass could only be effective if they are used or implemented properly, just like roundabouts. Now, if we are going to implement or design and construct overpasses at any of the junctions, be it the Eagle, the Jaguar, the Bridge roundabout, whichever roundabout, it must be guided by empirical data. So my thing is, you can put an overpass where your highest volume of traffic is coming from, not where you perceive the interruption in the traffic coming from. Because I heard talk about an overpass being on, that is the dump site road. An overpass, Hogs Bush, right? So an overpass going over that entrance to the roundabout. Now the question is, what informed that decision? Was there a study done? Does the volume of traffic coming from Hogs Bush
justify?
Does it warrant an overpass? Will it solve a congestion problem at that junction? Those are questions you have to ask yourself. So if we eliminate that traffic that's coming from Hogs Bush, does it solve the problem? Immediately you will see it doesn't. Your main problem, your major volume of traffic is heading north-south.
Correct.
And so any implementation should consider those lanes, north-south lanes, as overpasses. That would reduce significantly the congestion at those poorly designed roundabouts.
No. Do you think that it is a case whereby they could have done an overpass if they would have taken a few more months to really study the traffic situation? Or in your opinion, does it come off as something that was just rushed?
Right.
Putting a roundabout to feed into a major and I want you to, because we spoke about it briefly off here. So the first part of the question would be, could it have been achieved prior to opening the bridge? Meaning that instead of going down the line of a roundabout, they could have gone in the direction of an overpass. But I think that might cost a little bit more and it'll be a little bit longer on the deadline period. And then I want us to go into the issue of the point you were making before we got on air, which is the issue of the redundancy. Because I think people really should understand the importance of that. And a key, I think, infrastructural defect that we have in Guyana. And I like how you phrase it. So let's deal with that. Do you think they should have gone that direction instead of a fourth or fifth roundabout?
Yeah. Getting vehicles onto the traffic from the southern lane, no, from the eastern lane, and that is vehicles heading north south. Getting vehicles onto that bridge from the eastern lane of that 4-lane road, Heroes Highway, would always be troublesome because you have to now crisscross two lanes coming from south heading north. And so a roundabout in that location would be feasible. Now, remember I said roundabouts regulate traffic in junctions, right? So a roundabout in that area is feasible. However, you have to still cater for your traffic that is heading from north south, south north. In order to really improve your continuity in that flow, I believe overpasses are required. Instead of persons having to go wide of that roundabout to continue going straight, you can do overpasses. And like I said, it has to be guided by empirical data. So there must be a study.
That would look like instead of having to go for the persons coming from town heading towards Diamond,
right?
Instead of having to make that whole around, and then you have persons who are not going around, because I want everybody to understand the many things happening in that roundabout. Because you have the persons coming north heading south towards Diamond, right? They're going to be heading into that, but you have two sets of traffic in that lane heading up.
Yep.
Which is the first set of traffic who continuing their journey,
correct,
heading to Mocha, Arcadia, or Stelling, Diamond.
Yep.
Right. Then you have the same people in that same traffic now who are heading to West Coast, Versailles, all these places now, and they're both using the same road, but you might have some persons who might be going straight, but they end up on the west side lane, and then you have some persons who go in the west side, but they end up on the Diamond lane.
That's right.
And that, I guess that's the crisscrossing you're referring to.
That's right.
And then when we add in now people coming off of the bridge, one, people coming down from Diamond heading down to town, that's two, and then you have the other traffic that probably didn't want to come up the Heroes Highway to avoid those three roundabouts that are coming through from Amazonia Mall entrance side, and they're making that wrong. So you have like about 5 to 6 streams of traffic coming from all locations, and they're forced now to head into this one bottleneck. I don't know if that's the right term. I would call it a bottleneck because it's like 6 different roads going into one road, and half of them are supposedly going over the river. The other half is probably heading to town, and the next part is probably going up. And a roundabout in there, you could see where the confusion is, especially where there's not enough knowledge. Okay, even to me, I find myself confused because even though there's a partition on that particular roundabout, prior to reaching to the actual roundabout, there's a partition. When you get on the roundabout, it's not clear whether or not you understand. Suppose now I end up on the far left, and I'm really supposed to be on the right, heading to around, so you could see the confusion. Whereby what you're proposing is that overpass would be a diversion, or diverting that particular traffic into a different road, which then goes over the road and connects
over the
into
roundabout.
The bridge. Goes over the roundabout and connects into the bridge.
Well, the overpass, I was saying that it must be guided by empirical data, and you put your overpass in the areas that you have the highest volume of traffic, I believe. And so instead of, if your highest volume of traffic is heading north-south on Heroes Highway, passing, going straight through the roundabout instead of going onto the bridge, then there's where your overpass should be. It would be very simple to do that, rather than to have persons go left of the roundabout and then come back in. And even at I think a more um, a better area would be at the Eagle Roundabout. Is what you call in the Jumbie Board
Jumbo
Roundabout.
word, yeah.
Right. So if an overpass could be done for persons who are going north south, both directions, one lane, exit, completely eliminating the roundabout from their commute, just over and continue on Heroes Highway. Same at the Jaguar roundabout, over and continuing, you would reach home. Persons who are going to, let's say, for example, Diamond, it is one continuous drive right through.
That sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
And just in my last set of questions, is it a case whereby Guyana is not at a place where we could facilitate these new infrastructural developments?
No, of course not. It's just that our mindset has to change. We, I believe, we're not exposed enough. And so when we talk about a project, we look at it as something that would solve our problem. But then solving your problem does not mean that, or trying to solve your problem does not mean that you plan for your existing problem. For example, we have 10,000 vehicles probably every 3 months coming into the Guyana. Now, when you build a network, a road network, that is to last probably 50, 60 years without major rehab, you have to cater for that growth within that transportation network that you build, lest you end up with another Demerara Harbor Bridge where people have to be standing in line, sitting in line, waiting for hours. So we designed for growth, and we designed for engineering purpose, and we designed for economic growth. So if your growth rate is 3%, 4%, 5% per annum, then, and you're catering for 30 years down the line, then simple mathematics. You create a design that will cater for 50 years down the line, that you have continuity in your flow of traffic. A case where you don't have to revisit that project except for minor maintenance over that period.
Let me ask you something, Richard. We spoke about it before we came on here today, and you were able to illuminate my mind, at least in something that I think a lot of Guyanese don't even realize is a problem. And I think you refer to it as redundancy.
Yeah.
There's a redundancy. So I want you to explain that to us in the context of the bridge and in relation to movements in Guyana, and just so to help the people of Guyana understand why, because we know there is talks about moving and decommissioning the old bridge, and I think you told me earlier that you don't think it should be moved and you don't think it should be done away with.
Yeah.
And I want you to explain to the Guyanese people about that.
Yeah. In any developing country or developed country, there must be your transportation sector is really the main artery in your development. Nothing happens without the movement of goods and services. And so your transportation network is critical. Now, when we talk about redundancy in transportation, we basically mean that there must never be one route that you use to commute or to go to wherever you want to go. For the existence of Guyana, there was one road to go everywhere. There's one road to go to Berbice. If you're going to Berbice and you don't want to use that road, you have to probably fly. There's one road to get to Linden, and the same thing applies. You got to fly. There's one road to get to Timeri. There's one road to get to Perico. And so there's no redundancy in those networks. So God forbid something happens to that road. For example, look what happened. I think it was 2 Saturdays ago when there was a backup of traffic on the
two vehicles where you're not moving on the bridge.
Well, not that one, but the East Bank.
Oh yeah. Oh,
when there was some works,
correct.
some contractors executing works, and there was this massive backup where people trying to get to the airport. We saw persons come out of their vehicles, pulling their suitcases in desperation to get to the airport to make, and some flights were canceled and so on. That should never happen. We have moved from that era. We are in a place now that resources are available, and we have to make wise decisions with the resources that we have. I'm saying, let us apply this situation to the Demerara Harbor Bridge. Last week, not Saturday gone, the Saturday before, there was a buildup of traffic on the East Bank, on the Heroes Highway. I was trying to commute across the bridge and couldn't get onto the bridge because of the traffic. And I was like, what's going on here? Later on, we learned that 2 vehicles were rendered immobile on the bridge. I'm saying that had commuters had the option of using another bridge, because we don't know when 2 vehicles again will be immobile, because the vehicles that we have in Guyana are not the best quality, but there must be redundancy in transport. And we've had one bridge, one Demerara bridge, for the entire existence of Guyana. Right. And that bridge served us well. But then again, if you want to commute across the Demerara River, there was only one option. Now we are blessed with 2 options. Well, we're making it one option again because we're trying to we want to remove it and replace it. Not replace it, we've already replaced it. We want to remove it now. I'm saying that the attempts to remove the Demerara Harbor Bridge should be revisited. The plans should be revisited. Because in the event of an emergency, persons must have an option. Well, here, this bridge is we having an issue with this bridge now, you can use your other option, go around to the Demerara Harbor Bridge, the old bridge. Now, I was told that the plan was to take it to link Timeri with Sand Hills. Well, if that is the case, because some persons are saying it makes no sense to leave the bridge there and maintain it. Maintenance cost for the bridge is high, and so when we take it to Sand Hills, doesn't it require maintenance? You understand where I'm coming from? So,
correct.
So, how marine traffic used to pass?
Correct.
Persons would ask the question: how marine traffic is going to pass? Now we have a high bridge that marine traffic could flow freely under.
Still, yeah.
But then the Demerara Harbor Bridge, if that remains, has to retract for marine traffic to pass through. It's been retracting for over 40, 50 years.
How come it's suddenly an issue now?
Retracting it shouldn't be an issue now, and there's no disruption of traffic, or little disruption of traffic, if any, with retracting it now, because there's an option.
Correct.
So for developing countries, there must always be continuity. There must always be redundancy in transportation.
Well, I mean, you said it. You said it very well yourself. And in our last point, Guyana, we have seen something very unique in our country, which is that a license series is released today. Like, I remember it like it was yesterday when the PA series came out, and you blinked in one day and you moved from PAB, and I think in less than a year now we're at PAM, PAL. You understand? And it's moving rapidly.
M now, yeah.
So what we're seeing is that more Guyanese are purchasing vehicles, which means that there are more vehicles on the road. The Heroes Highway, when it was initially built, as it is dubbed now, Concussion Highway, and I know you did a little research on the Busby Dam and that particular road, and I had an opportunity to peruse it. And one of the things that you brought to light was the different gradings and the coatings that these roads require. So now we have more vehicles traveling and traversing the roads. We're building more roads, but from what I'm seeing is that the quality in roads is decreasing. So that nice smooth, I think it is bitumen road or tar road that we're accustomed to, we're now getting concrete road. And we're seeing the issues with that with the Heroes Highway, which was recently commissioned. And every other couple of months, they have to be patching a piece here, patching a piece here, patching a piece there. Now, I think that the road wasn't done properly, but what I think doesn't really matter because I'm not an engineer. So I want you to just in our last, because we have to wrap up here. In our last part, I want you to just comment on that issue with the grading of the road and the types of road and how we reach to deciding whether, or is it a case where the Guyanese people are being shortchanged? What are your thoughts on that?
Right. So if you have a road that was constructed or completed, and 3 years after, let's take the Heroes Highway. I don't like to call that road a highway because it's not. Anyway, let's take the Heroes and look at the issue that you raised, areas that were damaged and had to be. That road was commissioned, I think, in 2021, was it? Or 2022?
Like 2022 there, both.
Right. So you're saying that 3 years after, you had to repair that road, major damage. The issue is concrete roads usually are more durable than asphaltic concrete roads. And so with the design of Heroes, the concrete roads should be lasting a minimum of 20 years without major repairs, because concrete roads are really durable as compared to asphaltic roads. And I'll tell you why. Because we have soft clays in Guyana, and asphaltic road is considered a flexible pavement. It moves. You may not see it, but it moves. Right? And soft clays move too.
Correct.
So when you rest load on soft clays, once not compacted properly in the different layers, right? The sub base, the base, and the base course, and that kind of thing, it's not compacted properly, right? And compaction has to be done in engineering standards. The ASTM standard for compaction, I think, is 95% proctor density. And it must be tested throughout the road in sections, right? Now, every layer. Now, the point is, once that is not done, you will find things like what happened on the Busby Dam Road, where the asphalt seems to be popping up in bubbles, where the road is like folding. That is happening because the layers beneath the road is moving. And it's moving under stress. And stress from loads, moving loads, vehicles passing. And so because of that, there was a decision not to do Heroes with asphalt, because obviously they want to rush and get it done quickly and that kind of thing. But in doing so, you find that even some sections of Heroes, it's destroying because poor construction work is happening. So those are the two problems we have. One, our construction methodology is failing us, and that is evident on the Busby Dam Road that was completed a mere 3 months ago or 4 months ago. And Heroes Highway, where I believe the construction methodology again had failed us, because had those samples been properly tested, when I say samples, whenever a concrete truck is on site to pour, cubes are taken from it. But even let's go before the concrete truck the concrete truck arrives on site. At a batching plant, there is what we call, like when you're cooking a pot, you have your ingredients, so much rice, so much peas, so much salt, so much whatever else you put in it, seasoning, whatever it is. There is a list of ingredients for your concrete, and that comes from your design people. So if this road requires a concrete strength of 4,500 pounds per square inch, there is a design that will give you that. How to mix your concrete to get that. But you don't give your contractor that design and expect that you would get that design poured on site. So there must be supervision. I have a friend that used to say, you don't get what you expect, you get what you inspect. So inspection must be taking place at your batching plant, and inspection must be taking place on site.
Well, you see,
so when your concrete comes on site and it's poured, you take your samples and you crush them also. And if it doesn't reach the required strength, then that portion has to be condemned.
But you see how from what you're saying, I could only draw two conclusions. One, that more people are using the roads that should be, and for must be damned that that deficiency is very strange, because I know a lot of persons don't know about the road behind Diamond. I know the people who are going to know about that are the commuters who like to take the shortcuts.
Yeah.
So Busby Dam is not a popular, you could go at that road during peak hour traffic, you could go at it during low hour traffic, and it's going to be the same traffic. I've been on the road a few times, and there's not a lot of traffic on that road. So to see that kind of deterioration, that's concerning, one. And two, based on everything you're telling me, it makes me wonder if we do have a ministry that is responsible for these kind of things. I would like to believe that we have an entire governmental ministry with persons who are educated or even more educated or more experienced as you, who are supposed to take note of these things. So when we see these deficiencies in our day-to-day life, it makes us wonder, what is that entire ministry doing over there? Probably they don't need a bishop anymore. They might need a pundit, another religious leader to take over that ministry, because we cannot accept these things whereby, especially as I mentioned, where the vehicle and the traffic is increasing. The population is moving away from public transport, and they're going to, at least the middle class and the upper middle class are going towards their own transport. The interest rates are better. You could get from as low as $40,000 to $50,000 installments per month. You understand? And then you have the other half of the lower class who's heavily dependent on public transport, but there's still an increase on the amount of vehicles on the road, and we're not building enough roads. Well,
and when we build them, we're not building them properly.
And it's a travesty. And we hope that the government will take note of these things. I think we definitely need to come back and have another conversation in relation to infrastructure. But unfortunately, we're fresh out of time today. I would like to thank you for coming today, Richard. I'm sure the Guyanese public, as well as myself, we're leaving here with a lot more information. I'm definitely going to be watching back this. I don't make it a habit of watching back programs, because something about listening to myself talk is a little, it's a little strange, but I definitely want to listen back to this program, because I think you illuminated us on a lot of things that are not in the public domain, and we're just to accept, press conferences and sending the commissioner of police up on a road to take a picture and said, oh, we're monitoring at 5 a.m. meetings, when the solution to these things requires more preparation, proper planning, and as you properly said, inspection from start to the finish. Right, so we hope they like to listen to us. We hope they're listening today, especially. You understand, they're paying attention to what we're saying, and that is all we have today, folks. Thank you. Today is October 19th. My name is Corbin. I was joined by Mr. Richard Hoyte today, and you were on Nation Watch, powered by the People's National Congress Reform. Do tune in next week. We're happy to have you here. Good day.